In a galaxy far, far away, there exists a group of fierce and fabulous women who are on a mission to explore the depths of pop culture. They are the Galactic Gals, and they are here to take you on a journey through the cosmos of entertainment. From the latest TV shows and movies to a trip down the Milky Way of nostalgia, they will delve into the worlds of fantasy and imagination, bringing you insights and analysis that are out of this world. So buckle up, cosmonauts, and get ready to blast off with the Galactic Gals Pop Culture Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Galactic Gals, the Star Beast Doctor Who review, the day after. Take that as you will, but hello and welcome. We got a full house today. We have Night Owl as usual, and then
Hey,
our
everybody.
resident Galactic guy, Retro Doc, and then we have the creator of these wonderful posters, Jason.
Yay.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
I just actually wanted to start out by apologizing for being male. So I just want to get that out of
the way. Yeah. Oh boy. Mercy.
Yeah, this was a piece of work. Well, it was a mixed bag, and I think Jason would agree with me on that it was, and you know, he sat there and watched it with me, you know, bless him, you know, and suffered through some of the wokeness with me, and you know, we enjoyed quite a bit of it. There was good parts, bad parts. Yeah, it was a mixed bag. And then we'll kind of get into that more, but you know, first of all, I think we should kind of start with going around the room and basically talking about the good things about the episode. I think that's kind of fair, and then we'll delve into the wokest of the woke and the awful as we go along. But I think that's actually a really good idea. But I'm going to start with Michelle, and just kind of summarize what you liked about the episode.
I like the cinematography aspect of it. You know, the the explosions that you had and everything. You could definitely tell bigger budget. I love the sonic technology that, where he could make the shields and everything. I thought that was pretty cool. It was great seeing David and Catherine back on screen together. It's like they really didn't miss a beat. They kind of just picked up, and you could feel the energy between them, even though, she didn't know who he was at first. It was great hearing him mention Wilf. I was hoping we were going to get to see him, but I guess, patience is a virtue. So hopefully next episode we'll get to see him. Love the TARDIS interior. I thought that was great. It reminded me of, a mix between, 4 and 5. I love all the round things. Still like 12's TARDIS better. Storyline, it was okay for what it was. And the unit, when they came up, it reminded me of Torchwood. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they're all in black or whatever. But overall, it was okay. It wasn't the, oh my God, I got to watch this sort of thing, for me. But it was entertaining enough, So
Okay. So Gary, what was your good things about
Good thing?
the first one?
Well, when I was watching it, I had a nice breakfast. I had some little sausage and some eggs and stuff, and so that experience was nice.
Okay.
No, there was some. I mean, I liked seeing David Tennant back. Obviously, I like the fact that he was not parroting 10. I mean, he was playing it, a little bit more, mature. I liked the basic story, but then I am a huge fan of the original story. This is one of my collections with Doctor Who, and it's been reprinted a lot of times, and I'm a huge fan of the original story. So I did like the elements, although they knocked a lot of good stuff out for time. I did like the basic story of the Star Beast and the Roth Warriors and stuff. I like moments. I like the idea of the Doctor kind of having to sneak around to investigate, like cut a hole in the fence and sneak around so nobody sees him, as opposed to just prancing in and owning the room, from the get-go. I like that element. I liked little moments like when he thought Dawn had died, he just kind of looks up at the soldiers and says, do what you want. At that point, he'd given up. So moments like that kind of stuck out for me more than big chunks of it. I thought that the interaction between Tennant and the new scientific advisor was well played, although that had its own kind of confusing moments. But I thought that their interaction was, I'm sure other things pop up as we go here today.
Okay. All right. Well, Jason, I know somewhat what you thought, but I'd like to get your take on what you liked and loved about the episode.
I don't know if I loved anything about it, but I did like some of the production of it. I thought they did a good job with the production. I mean, it looked more like less like the, I don't want to say cheesy, but some of the special effects that Doctor Who has been associated with haven't exactly been top notch, and I think they did a good job. I mean, that's all the money that Disney got. I mean, we saw some of that on display. And I like that aspect. The story was okay. I mean, it would have been a lot better had it not been marred by all the wokeism. But as far as the story, I mean, the story was, I agree with Gary. It was a watchable story. It was, like I say, it would have been a lot better had there not been all this other garbage. And that kind of detracted a lot. But in terms of what I liked, I thought there were some comedic elements to it. I was surprised to kind of chuckle Early on, I didn't like the meep, but then as you as you kind of come to terms with the character, you see it doing a couple of funny things. You know, like in the car when it goes meep meep. I don't know, I can't imitate it, but I thought that was kind of comedic, and just the way it kind of waddled past the door in the hall, when you see it kind of waddling in the hallway and you're seeing it from the room perspective, and it's just this, the way it kind of waddled was funny. And I mean, there's moments like when the chaos breaks out in the house. I thought that there was some entertainment value there, and I appreciated the chemistry between David Tennant. It just overall, I mean, if I had to say, it's head and shoulders way above as far as the acting and so forth. I mean, it's just way above what we were given with Chibnall's era. So I appreciated the acting. I didn't really see anybody in there that I thought like, man, that's just completely cardboard. So that was good. There were quite a few things that I liked about it. But again, I just think it was marred by all the things that weren't so great. Anyway, that's kind of my take.
Well, that it's pretty much sums up what I feel. I do love the TARDIS, but there's so many other things wrong with this that all those things like all the wokeness kind of takes away from that. Watching it again this morning, I seem to, enjoy it better, maybe because I knew what was coming. So I could kind of sit down with it and go, okay, I know this is coming. Let's just try to enjoy the good parts, which I did. And I love seeing David Tennant and Catherine Tate again together. I love the scene where he walks up and obviously he runs into her. He sees a person having trouble with boxes, and of course it's her. And then he puts the boxes right back when he notices her and tries to walk away. And I think that was an awesome comedic moment. I really thought that was perfect. And just the scenes with Sylvia, and when he's at the door and she literally growls. She really likes you. That was funny, I mean, those moments, because she's never liked him to begin with, but now he's back at her house and she's afraid for her daughter. And I thought all the scenes in the house were really great with the screens, like you guys have said, with the sonic tech. I thought that was really cool. I thought it was just, and I actually liked the scene in the parking garage for the trial. I thought the best line of the whole thing was like, you stupid woman and your weird child. It's like, I literally laughed out loud. I thought it was great. I thought that was a great line. So there's a lot of good things and a lot of great things about this. Unfortunately, it's marred with a lot of panderism, wokeism, and just misandry.
You didn't miss Jodie's Sonic, Andy?
No, in fact, I commented to Jason, and he can basically tell you that too. That I'm like, well, God, I'm so glad that they didn't use her Sonic. Because usually, like, they inherit the Sonic from the previous, and they get a new one. But I'm glad that they already had built a new one before, because I just think that would have been another thing for people to like focus on and just not be happy with. So
I just want to, before we get into the bigger issues, I just wanted to say about the Sonic. I'm actually, and I rewatched it this morning, I'm still not completely sure what I think about the new Sonic yet, because I did like where, when he's just casually sitting there in the steelworks, basically using the Sonic for a screen with all the displays and everything. That made sense to me, because that seemed to be like a simple projection of the information that would already be contained within the Sonic scans. I mean, he scanned the ship, and now he's basically just kind of showing that to him, projecting that data to himself. But when it comes to the admittedly well-staged scene where he basically builds these huge energy shields and that can move and all that. Yeah, it looked visually, it was good. It was exciting. It was great. But during that scene, I'm thinking, wow, there is absolutely nothing that this Sonic cannot do anymore. And I'm actually honestly still not sure what I think about that. Just an observation.
You know, the computer screen that he projected, it reminded me, my first thought was, oh, that's Tony Stark right there. Because that's what Tony Stark would do in Iron Man. You know, and of course now Marvel's owned by Disney, so it fits. You know, that was my thinking with that. Interesting though. Really interesting.
I didn't mind the little screen. I thought that was neat. I really did.
I want to clarify something that they're talking about in the chat. And hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us today. We love seeing all of you. Garbage mentioned about that. You're talking about the Star Beast ship. What was the light in the ship? Why did the Roth ship land in the Steelers pretending it was crashing? That was confusing the way that they presented it, but like I said, I was watching it carrying my memories of the original story. The ship that was crashing in the original story did crash. That was the Meep ship crashing. The Roth ship always stayed in orbit, and they were teleporting their people down. So the ship that was in the Steelworks was not the Roth ship. That was the Meep ship. The Roth, we didn't see the Roth ship, which in the comics is great, but that presumably just was up in orbit, and we never actually saw their actual ship. That wasn't the one that crashed. Just want to clarify that since they're talking about it in the chat.
Okay, so let's get on to the elephant in the room, which is the negative things about this episode, and that kind of took it down several notches. So again, we'll start with Michelle, and then we'll go around the room, and then we'll talk about all the negative things that that plagued this otherwise decent episode.
Yeah, even my husband said if all the woke garbage wasn't in there, it would have been a great little episode. But for him, that was a complete turnoff, you know, because he watched it with me and he listened to it again this morning. And I mean, when Donna's walking down the street with whatever you want to call Rose, and the other kids are making fun and calling names, you know, and you know, Donna's trying to console the child, you know, and she says, you know, she'd burn the world for her. From a mom's point of view, of course, you know, a mother would defend her child no matter what. You know, I'd kill for my kids. I mean, that's just a mom. But the woke crap with it all, I'm like, really? We don't need it in there. I mean, and it's littered in through it, and it was totally unnecessary. You know, you could still entertain without putting all that crap in there. You know,
I didn't have a problem with the bullying scene, but I know what you're saying. I think,
Yeah.
you know, again, this is a screenshot. You know, basically the kids are saying, "Give us a kiss, J-boy," because obviously his name is Jason. That would be considered his dead name, right?
Yeah.
I didn't really have necessarily that was just kind of like I could expect that, right? That's a subtlety, right? That's subtle woke. That's not what we get later.
Yeah.
But
Later on it gets worse. Yeah. Later on, I mean, it's point blank in your face, you know, the slap across the face type thing, and it's like so unnecessary. It's like, just tell the story and entertain us, you know, like I've said all along. And that's what kind of brought the whole show down for me, was all of that mess. You know, the aliens were cool. And then when the doctor's addressing the Meep, and then she jumps in about the pronouns, it's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, just, you know, get over it. It's a damn alien. Who cares? You know, it just, so that's the stuff that ruined it for me.
could you have dealt with it if they'd have just left it here with the pronoun thing and not continued later on? Would this just have been a little minor thing, but because it's compounded with the misandry later and just the whole non-binary woke later, I think that was kind of, for me, that was kind of like the catalyst. Like I just couldn't, like, I didn't like this, but if this was the only thing and the bullying thing was the only thing, I could have probably went, my rating would have went higher. I don't know. Were you one of these people who were just like, okay, I can handle a little bit, but don't keep compounding it? It seemed like they just kept on.
Yeah, they kept on. And when they were saying, binary, whatever, and the doctor's male and female, I'm like, oh, for God's sakes, no, stop. It's like, geez, enough with it already.
Right.
So
what did you think about
Donna
insulting the doctor? What did you think about that?
Well, she's always called him Dumbo and everything, but it felt like she was just bashing men. And I'm like, okay, you're supposed to be his best friend. Why are you doing this? I mean, I couldn't quite wrap my head around that.
Well, some would say
it's going to take me some time to go back and figure.
Because that she had, Time Lord energy, and that would be more something like somebody that would be more superior would say. But still, it comes across as man bashing, a very misandrist statement. And then coming from a trans woman, coming from that perspective that you're a woman now. Yeah, you're a woman, which you aren't, but you're a woman. And so you're kind of, trying to basically say that, it's like you're a man that's saying that about another man. And that's how I kind of viewed it, even though, yes, you look like a woman, but it's only passing. So it kind of struck me as very ironic and funny. And it just, that annoyed me to high heaven. It all annoyed me. But then you got to put that on top of the shit cake, and then it all goes to hell. So I think that was almost like I could hear the nails coming out with the coffin at that point. Because I knew that was going to be one of the griping points on Twitter, and I wasn't wrong. But yeah. So anything else horribly and awful and negative about this episode for you?
How did Donna know that that the doctor had been a woman? I mean, unless it was just from that meta-crisis point. But, I can't wrap my head around that either. I get the meta-crisis point, where, okay, Donna got married, had a baby, and some of that Time Lord energy, went to the child. That makes a lot of sense. And then at the end where she was saying, we're just going to let it go. I'm like, really? Why do you want to take away, something powerful like that from the doctor? I mean, because essentially he could just simply let things go too, but then that takes away from his character to me.
Right.
I don't know. It still would have just been better without all that crap in there.
Oh, 100%.
I hope the next two
much higher
episodes
than what
get
it is.
better. Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
I know for me watching it, maybe about a 4.5 or a 5 for me.
We're already going to rate it now?
Well,
I
no,
am.
she's just,
okay.
yeah.
That's just for me.
Yeah. Okay, Gary. So your turn.
I
know you have a list.
Well, no, not a list, but I just want to say, if anybody, I was actually thinking that same question that Michelle had during the show, the first time I watched it, which is, wait a minute, how would Donna know to say, why did this face come back? Because the only person that the doctor had explained that he'd been a guy with a bow tie, Scotsman, then a woman, now was the new scientific advisor. No way Donna would have even have known, especially without her memories, to ask that question, why did this face come back? Because as far as she was concerned, he'd never changed. So that, I think, was a way to keep reinforcing, well, two reasons, which we'll kind of probably get into later. But if anybody has in the chat has a theory about how she would have known that to ask the question, put that in there, because our chat always comes up with interesting theories. But for the moment, I'm actually not going to go with like specific lines I didn't like, because I'm sure that we're going to get into it. I'm just going to make a couple of general observations about what I thought about the episode as a whole. My first thought as I was about this is that going by the Children in Need skit and this, that watching the RTD2 era is going to be a very tiring experience. I mean, first he retcons probably one of the most memorable villains in the classic era for an absurd manufactured reason. And now he completely unravels all of the stakes of one of the great New Who arcs with a completely nonsensical and self-indulgent resolution, which to me just kind of undercut my memory now of season 4. I'm not really surprised that an agenda ideologue like RTD wouldn't be able to help himself. That didn't surprise me, but I thought at the very least he'd wait until Shooty showed up and use the specials to just be nothing but good entertainment to kind of bring back the audience that fled from Jodie. But he floored it right from the get-go. And that did surprise me, actually. I mean, I think I get the feeling that he started with the statement that he wanted to make, or the biggest statement that he wanted to make, because he made a lot of statements that we're probably going to get into. But I think his biggest one, the big lesson, which is like non-binary is better than anything else, anybody else. You know, the power of gender politics saves the day. And then he works backward from that to lead everything to that point. I'm pretty sure that's kind of how he works. But, and you know, going by the Unleashed episode, which was interesting and fun. I like seeing the behind the scenes tech of how they designed the creatures and all of that. And that still interests me. But so clearly there's some skilled effects artists behind this. It's clear from watching the Unleashed episode. But it just seems to me that it's all in just now in service of something so misplaced and self-indulgent on RTD's part, which again to me just undercuts it all. And in both of the Unleashed episodes so far, the one for the Children in Need and this, and we talked about the Children in Need one last week, but in both of these, RTD just sits there smugly explaining that if you don't think like him, if you don't believe this or that, then you're either an ist or a phobe or just generally unenlightened. And to me, that's just completely off-putting and obnoxious. And so I'm reacting to both the, in both of these instances, the Children in Need and this, it's like what I was actually watching was bad enough, but then it only got compounded by his comments and explanations during the Unleashed episode. So those are just my general thoughts. I know we'll get into specific lines and stuff and all the Misandry stuff later, but you know, that's it for.
Yeah, that's all good points. I compounded it well, I think. I think I'm already upset about the Davros thing, so I want to went in very, you know, low level, no expectations, bad expectations. So yeah, I can understand how that can compound, especially if you're a fan and you go in watching it. If you're not a fan going and watching it, you have no reference. So I can
Oh, that's
relate.
that's a specific point that we need to come back to later about what would be like. I don't want to get into it now, but about what would it be? I started thinking, what would it be like if this was the first episode of Doctor Who that you saw, because it's new to Disney, whole legion of new fans, kids, fans, parents, whoever. This might be the first exposure they got. What would that be? What would they have taken from
Right.
that? But that's
Exactly.
something that we'll get into later.
Yeah. All right. So, Jason, what was your negative points? I'm sure you have a list as well. I know I did.
Give me 1 second.
All right.
Yeah, for me, the it's like I feel like a mosquito at a nudist colony. Where do I begin? There's so much there, sort of to tackle as far as the negative. I mean, I don't really. I think just to touch on one of Gary's questions about the TARDIS energy. No, not the TARDIS. I'm sorry. How would Donna have known that the Doctor was previously a woman? Could it be possible that maybe the shared energy that she had allowed her to have a connection that enabled her to be privy to information that maybe she wouldn't have known otherwise? Possibly. That's the only thing I can think of. Otherwise, it wouldn't. I can't think of any real good reasons, honestly. But that aside, I could have. There were some digs early on, and I think that bothered me a lot. But I wouldn't have gotten past it, but it would have made it so much more palatable if we hadn't had to have identity just shoved in our face, early on. I mean, it was a constant barrage of identity stuff, and it just seemed like Yasmin Finney. What's her name? Is it Yasmin Finney?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Rose. Yeah.
Yeah. She, basically she's just, my impression is, because she's not a great actress, but my impression is she's just a megaphone for the transgender community. She's just there to ensure that we get our message out. So, because I think she was kind of a weak link. I say she, but I just think the pronoun thing, for instance, like Michelle was saying, was ridiculous. I mean, we got to point out that we have to question the Doctor's use of pronouns during a time when he's trying to communicate with an alien. I mean, this is an alien creature. This isn't even human. It doesn't look human. Why would you be worried about the pronouns for a creature that's not human? It has fur. It looks like a teddy bear. It looks like some kind of stuffed animal. Why are you worried about the pronouns of that creature? It makes no sense, and this is supposed to be like a lesson, for people, for viewers. So that bugged me. That was a specific example, but I think the elephant in the room, I think that the thing that really kind of shocked me was at the end. The whole binary, non-binary thing, the line. I mean, when I heard the line, "You know nothing, and we know everything," and the line after that is basically like, "Because we're women. You know nothing because you're a man, you're a male representing Doctor, and we know everything because we're women." And it's just unfortunate you don't know everything. It's unfortunate you're not a woman. And to me, that struck me as so weird because, for one thing, they never asked the Doctor what his pronouns were. They assumed that the Doctor was manifesting himself, representing himself as a man, when in fact we know from this sort of ideology, you can look like a man and not identify as one. So it kind of broke their own, standard in a way. But to me, that was, that was awful. It was just stupid. It was totally unnecessary and completely detracted from the storyline. It was like, I'm not sure which member we have in the chat that said it, but somebody, it's just like, it felt like somebody had thrown cold water on you. So for me, that was a big one. The other stuff I wouldn't have wrote it off, but that you can't get past that. You're just outwardly saying you don't know anything because you're a man and we know everything because we're women. It's just stupid. Anyway, so I'll leave it there.
And in that last scene, especially when I rewatched it this morning, yeah, there were comments, earlier in the episode, but for that scene especially, I stopped seeing them as characters in their own right, Donna and Rose, and I saw them solely as like mouthpieces for RTD. I mean, they could have overdubbed all that dialogue in his own voice, and it would have been the same for me. I thought, no, these characters are now just basically stand-ins for him, and that completely took me out of it, which is like, as a writer, you never want to make it that obvious where the characters lose their own self and just exist to spout whatever it is the writer wants.
No, I agree. I think, and that was the big takeaway for me, is that yes, we did have political. There were political leanings in some, classic episodes. There's been things throughout classic pop culture where they do touch on issues. The difference here is that this is so overt. This is not subtle whatsoever. I mean, in the old days, Star Trek, you had some subtlety. You did have subtlety, and they would get a message in there and they would relay a message, but it was very subtle. And this is like a sledgehammer. This is taking, when you need tweezers, he's taking a sledgehammer to a job that requires tweezers. So I agree, Gary.
Well, and I was going to bring this up later, but Jason, you mentioned it now, is like I can already hear all of the people, online, social media, we're going to get a barrage this week. Oh, Doctor Who's always been political, which is their go-to argument of even people who haven't seen the classic series, but that's their go-to catchphrase in order to absolve any sins of being, overtly political that comes up that happened with Chibs, Who's always been political, and we're going to get a flood of it now with this stuff. And you're right. I mean, you mentioned Star Trek, which is, did it well because they did it, with subtlety. And yeah, Doctor Who has, there's been stories like, they'll trot out like the Green Death or the Sunmakers or Vengeance on Varos or the Happiness Patrol. But you know what? In those, it was done with style. It was done with class. It was done, as Jason, as you said, with subtlety, and it underpinned the story. But it was always secondary to the entertainment value and the coherence of the story, always in classic Who. Now, the message is the main thing, and the story exists solely to support the message. It's become completely inverted. And, ironically, I think that's people who have a problem with a lot of new Trek say the same, go to the argument, Jason, that you were making, which was you look at the classic series that was done with, subtlety and style. It was never overt. It never sacrificed the entertainment value of the story for the message. And now, when people just kind of let loose and go all in on the message, everybody just, recoils.
And I think also, not to, I know I want Michelle and you other guys to talk, but just to touch on that, in the old days, they would also be fair about it. I mean, look at a classic show, for example, like All in the Family. They didn't just attack Archie because they thought he was a racist or biased. They evenly split the attacks, and this is just a one-sided. You're leveling your accusations at men. It feels like you're attacking men, but men are what percentage of your audience? So you're attacking the very people you're trying to appeal to, and it's just a bad look.
Yeah, the Doctor's always been a masculine figure, especially back in the day, and now they're saying men are, toxic masculinity or whatever. And it's like, really? Just because he's a man and does man things? I mean, come on. We need to have men be men and, women be women. That's why we're, different.
Well, you know, it's just now it's even worse. It's white man bad. It's not just, you know, they've gotten this attitude is that, you know, anytime a white man says anything on the screen, he's a racist, he's a misogynist, he's homophobe, he's transphobic. Just because he likes traditional things or he's a moral person or a Christian person. It's gotten so bad that just the fact that there's a white man on screen, they can't handle it. They can't handle it. And if there's a white man on the screen like you have here, they've got to find a way to put a dig. Um, and Sadako 24 says, I think it was trying to claim women can give up power for the doctors because they don't have male ego, even though Hillary Clinton proves otherwise. So I agree. I think that's because they were probably trying to say that. That's a really great point. I don't know if you guys think that it is, but I do. I think that's probably what they were trying to do. But yeah, anytime a white man's on screen, it's they're even worse. Even worse.
Yeah,
That's controversial to say, but it's true.
yeah. We as science fiction fans, we know that in the science fiction world, there's everything. And, we accept that there's everything. And it's there in books, other TV shows, that we like or whatever. But it's all done very subtly. It's not, well, let's bash you upside your head and make you accept this kind of thing. And that's kind of the point that I feel that's what they're trying to do. You will accept it or else. It goes back to what Gary said that Russell said. If you don't like it, well, then the hell with you. Who are you to tell me how to think? You don't get to tell me how to think. I'm quite capable of making up my own mind.
I never, looking at, I don't know about, I'm sure I would tend to think Gary would agree, and maybe you, Michelle, would agree. But when you watch I'm sure Bluebonnet would agree. When you watch old episodes of Star Trek or Doctor Who or any of these classic series franchises, I never felt like, even when I was young, I never really felt like it never stood out. The political messaging, any kind of messaging that was there, to me, never really stood out. I didn't feel like I was being preached to. If they had a message, I just felt like it was part of the story and it enhanced the story. And there was a moral that they had, but it was really connected with the story. And this seems almost like there's a layer on top that they have to superimpose to draw attention, and they're screaming it out. Or they've got the volume turned up way beyond the background music. The vocals are way louder than the background music. They've really made the story not entirely background. And with this, it felt like there was kind of I knew that Russell was going to incorporate some things. It was just a matter of the extent to which he was going to do it. And I was prepared for it to go really bad, and I was prepared for it to go really well. And it kind of fits where I thought it would, in a sense, which is he's going to try to fuse, what we call wokeism with good entertainment. He's going to try to create a combination that he feels is palatable, and he just turned the volume way too high. The mix is way too unbalanced here. Subtlety is your friend, and he has really lost that.
When it becomes clear, or at least that was my perception, that he was doing this from a position of condescension and kind of superiority, then it just becomes so obvious that, to me, a lot of it was just kind of, it was so shameless. It eventually tilted over into being, embarrassing and a little laughable. Some of the lines were so on point, like the whole, the male presenting Time Lord. We've all discussed how absurd that is. And then, for Donna, of all people, to just go to say, like, you know nothing, which was kind of very petty, on her part, as if the Doctor being a male makes him less. Put aside whether she should have known, how she could have known, just even that moment, she was saying, you being a male, makes you less. Shame you're not a woman anymore. You were better as a woman. I know that on last week's show, we talked about how I mentioned why is it that, and they did this in the Children in Need skit where he says, "Oh, I used to be, I was just now a brilliant woman." You know, it's like, why can't they let Jody go? I mean, you know, for better or worse, there's a bad taste in most people's mouths for that era. Just let it go, but they can't let it go. I was starting to wonder, quite honestly, whether during the whole writing process, that if Chibnall occasionally, like at night, broke into RTD's office and got on his word processor and started adding some of these sentences in, and they just ended up filming it without anybody knowing any better, because it seems like they can't stop trying to validate her doctor, her era. She was brilliant. I got an upgrade. Now it's shame you're not a woman anymore. You were better as a woman. It's like, okay, we get it. You know, Jody was the best doctor ever. You know, let's just kind of accept that now and move on. All right. You know, you've beaten us into submission. You know, it's like, let's go. But one last point right now is, did you notice how, and I didn't notice this yesterday, but I noticed on the rewatch, think about how it treats any male in this show. The males in this episode are either mind-controlled soldiers who easily become mind-controlled, or they're basically neutered, like Sean, who is just fine with his wife giving away 166 million pounds, but no, all is good because, you know, I'm the luckiest man alive because Donna and Rose are the bestest ever. And basically he has no character in this episode other than to just go along with everything that's happening. So the males are either mind-controlled, neutered like him, or openly bashed in the dialogue like the doctor. Shame you're not a woman anymore. There's not a single male in this episode that gets out alive.
Or they're trans, or they're demasculated. There's something, you know, there's something wrong. They're not normal. They're not the normal traditional masculine male. Even the doctor is not, because no one will allow him to be a male. It's like we gotta make sure that, like, we, you know, we keep our balls in our purse.
I mean, Donna saying "you know nothing," that really struck me. I mean, that seemed
out of character.
Yeah, it was out of character.
Even
it was
for her.
Petty on her part. And I thought that's when I didn't see her as Donna anymore. I saw her as an RTD stand-in.
Yes.
What does gender have to do with it? What does gender have to do with what he knows?
Well, apparently everything, according to the writer.
Well, it's a rhetorical question, but seriously, I don't understand. What does gender have to do with what the doctor knows? He was a female representing doctor, quote unquote, before. He remembers that he was a female doctor. What did he lose in that transition exactly? Because it seems to me he's aware of what he knew. And so it didn't quite ring a bell on that note either. It seemed kind of counterintuitive in a way, because why would he, in other words, what knowledge was there that they're referring to? And maybe Gary, you've rewatched it. What knowledge was there that he didn't get that would have required you being a woman to get?
Just him being, and I'm not being glib, I'm, you know, honestly believe this. I think that it's just him being a male, just the essence of his now identity as a male makes him less. It doesn't matter what he thinks, does, or says. It's just when he went back from being a female to a male, he lost something. That process alone made him less. It wasn't a result of anything this 14th Doctor has done or said for the day or whatever they've known. And it's just you. It's just like I look at you and I see a male or a male presenting doctor, and in my mind that makes you less. That's kind of what I got from Rose in that.
I get that. I guess my question is from a story, from RTD's perspective, is what I'm asking. I mean, what was the? Because I'm trying to understand the logic. I don't want to, I don't want to put it down and assume that there isn't one. But I'm trying to figure out what knowledge would have been inaccessible to him, or that he would not have been able to grasp and understand because he is male representing? I'm trying to understand it from RTD's point of view so I can critically analyze it.
Well, in the story, it seemed like the way to solve the meta crisis, which as originally presented in season 4 was like a biological universal fact that the human body, any human body, cannot stand the energies that Donna had to take in, and it would destroy anybody. It would destroy, it just happened to be Donna, who was a woman, but if it had been anybody, a male, whoever, would have eventually destroyed their mind, because those energies are incompatible with, being contained in a human, so that the doctor had to wipe her memory. But now it seems like the solution, it's not all that. We can forget all that. It's basically that women, and like I said, I'm trying not to be glib, and if I'm misinterpreting it, please correct me. It seems like my perception of that scene was, unlike men, women have the power to just kind of let things go. They said it a couple of times. Just they held hands. They said, we just let it go. So apparently men, this is another bash, I guess. Men can't just let things go, like women do. So as long as they just make the decision that they're not going to hold on to the metacrisis energy, and they're just kind of now let it go, with that simple decision of, I'm letting you go, the energy just kind of dissipates and goes out in the universe. And that's all that needed to be done. Because I don't think they're going to revisit this whole metacrisis.
Well, Gary, as a woman, I can tell you if that's his logic, that's bullshit. Because I know women.
Am I misinterpreting it?
Agreed.
Am I misinterpreting kind of what I thought?
No, you're not misinterpreting it. But I know. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I agree. I think that's what he was trying to do. But he's so full of shit, because I know more women than probably RTD does. And I can tell you right now, we don't let things go. We hold grudges. So that's some bullshit right there. I know more men that can let things go than women. Including myself.
Was that kind of an answer, Jason, to what you were asking? At least that's my interpretation.
I think it's a good answer. I think for me, though, what throws me, okay, let's say that's true. The argument in the show that they're trying to make, the message that I get is that being a man or woman is irrelevant. That you can. I mean, look at Rose. Rose is a male who transitioned. So the takeaway for me was gender is kind of irrelevant. We can be a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. But then they're saying gender is relevant. So it's a two-headed message that they're sending. It's a contradictory message, and that's why I'm trying to wrap my head around it. On the one hand, you're saying, well, gender's irrelevant. My beautiful daughter, even though it's a male, but yet you're a man. So how can Rose understand if Rose is biologically male? How can Rose understand? Because your quote unquote daughter is a man. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate your interpretation. I even in that, I can't quite make sense of it, because it still has there's some flaws.
Yeah, I know.
Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah. Me personally, I'm with Andy. I definitely hold grudges. I'm not one to just let things go. Now, Tracy, my husband, yeah, he lets things go a lot easier than I do. That's just how I'm wired. I grew up, being an independent woman, period, able to stand on my own, with a man or without a man. And certain things get to me, and I hold on to anger or whatever, and some things I just cannot let go. I still don't know, what his whole deal was with that whole line. I can't help but think of that stupid movie Frozen, and they're singing "Let It Go" or whatever, and it's like it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and the other part of that equation, I think, is that the Doctor is how old? You think by now he's going to learn I mean, look, I get that he does learn lessons from humans, but this is one that I don't think that however old he is, he's probably who knows, thousands of years. It's arguable, but he hasn't learned how to let things go by now. I mean, really, you think like you've got that cornered because you're a woman, and furthermore, I don't know. It just didn't make sense. It just all the way around. It just felt like you're trying to shoehorn in this logic that doesn't really appeal because you have because you're an activist and you have a message to get across. That's what it felt like. It just felt like it was shoehorned in. Logic be damned.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Jack,
they just got to get in the last word.
Jack Thursby says they want to teach young people to believe trans women are real biological women. It's indoctrination. Yeah, I agree. I think it totally is.
That's why, it doesn't surprise me that this is all happening on Disney Plus now, because RTD's views and Disney's are completely in sync.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I actually do have a video that I want to share with everybody of RTD basically admitting and showing his hand that this is what they have planned, and this is the reasoning for the pronoun usage in the episode, and as well as the non-binary reference that I'm going to share with you guys really quick here. Have to go to Twitter because I couldn't find it on YouTube. So give me 1 second, and you can talk amongst yourself while I'm looking for it. But yeah, I do want to play it.
Gary, you said this whole story was based on a comic book. Is that right?
It's based on in the Doctor Who Weekly, back when they had serialized comic stories. This was the third story. It was called Doctor Who and the Star Beast, and it was one of the best. It's one of the best, most memorable Doctor Who,
but not just represented
comic stories ever. And we did it. Dan and Hadley and John Yulden and I did a video that just came out where we're kind of basically reviewing and kind of geeking out about the original story. And I would absolutely, totally urge anybody, whether you liked this episode, whether you didn't like this episode, if you've not read the original version, because they cut out a lot of great stuff. It's a Fourth Doctor story. It came out around the time of season 17, the Douglas Adams era. So there's that kind of tone to it. But it's a wonderful story. I urge you as strongly as possible to seek it out. I mean, it's been reprinted 100 times. They just came out with a new collection of all of the Fourth Doctor, comic stories, a Fourth Doctor anthology, I think they're calling it. So please track down the original story, no matter what you thought of this version of it.
Okay, cool.
All right, got the video.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and play it, and then Michelle, once we're done, you can finish your point. But I wanted to get this video.
Representation for representation's sake, either, Russell. Rose is a character. There's a lot more going on there than
absolutely. And actually, it becomes a vital part of the plot that Rose contains the he and the she and the neither and the both, and that's a new future. Rose goes beyond words, beyond definitions, and it is important. I think that visibility thing I said before is, like, as you were saying, if you grow up seeing this stuff, homophobia and transphobia happens when it's something you've never seen before. You can temper that reaction and change it if you introduce these images to people happily and normally and calmly when they're young. Then it just becomes normal. It is normal. I don't need to say it's normal, but that normality just becomes part of the world. You're not stressed, you don't freak, you don't react, you haven't lost anything, you don't hate anything. It's a better world.
All right. So what does everybody think of his statement?
Indoctrination. Teach it to them while they're young.
Agreed.
I remember, growing up, I knew that stuff was there, but it wasn't taught to me. It's just so wrong. Leave the children alone. If you're 18 and above, go for it. But I fear it's all geared for children, and that's where I draw the line. you know.
I would, yeah. I was struck when I first saw that about the when they're young part at the end. But I do want to say, and I think we'd all probably agree, I'm not saying anything that any of us wouldn't agree with. I mean, I think hatred, and I specifically hate in any form, I think is wrong, especially when it translates into violence. I mean, I think we could all agree that's beyond the pale. When phobia morphs into hate, which morphs into actual violence. I mean, no, of course not. But you know, I agree that yeah, especially when you're trying to, you know, from an early age, you know, explain that, you know, this is the best way, that if you don't believe this, there's something wrong with you, or you're not normal, or you're wrong, or you know, the kind of finger wagging. And once that locks in early, then that's something that you'll believe. Now, again, I mean, for me as a Christian, I can say it's a case of what they say. You can, you know, love you still have to, whatever you think about, you know, the action. I mean, the hatred.
Love the sinner, not the sin.
Yes, I don't want to. Yeah, love the sinner, not the sin. Which, taken in a broad term, whether you think of it as sin or something you don't agree with, whatever you think of it, you know, it's important to not let your feelings translate into hatred of that person or violence toward that person. You know, that's just what I'm trying to put out there. But yes, I totally agree with probably what everybody else, you know, thinks about what RTD is trying to do here.
He has, for a long time, people who have said there is an agenda, there is a lot of propaganda, and people have, you know, a lot of people, I want to say on the other side, have said, oh, that's baloney. There's no propaganda. This is just the way it's always been, and so forth and so on. And it's not true. This is the perfect example that demonstrates the point people have been making. RTD is saying point blank, the indoctrination of your children is a good thing. And if you don't want to call it indoctrination, you can call it whatever you want. If you look up the definition of indoctrination, how the hell do you say it? Indoctrination. But if you look up the definition of that, this would fit to a T. It is propaganda. I mean, if you look up if you look up the definition of propaganda, this would fit it. And of course, propaganda, you know, you could probably fit a lot of things into the definition of propaganda. But this is exactly what people have been complaining about. This is the perfect example. He said it point blank. And you can try to make excuses, but people have been making this point that this is what Hollywood and the entertainment industry have been trying to do doing for a long time. He's just openly admitting it. And they're so bold now. A lot of these people that think this way are so bold that they really don't have a problem coming out now and just admitting it.
I was struck by the way that this whole scene, when I first saw it on Unleashed, was staged. That he's right there, hovering over Yasmin Finney, and to make sure that his message, his point, is communicated exactly the right way that he wants it to be. I mean, the body language during this whole thing was just, you know, really apparent to me. And you know, I think that you know, the thing with that really I've realized now is that the show now really is RTD's platform. I mean, basically, it's a platform for his sledgehammer messaging on representation, identity politics, LGBTQ issues. I think when Shooty arrives for the soft reboot, I think the brakes are really going to be off. But, you know, and the thing about with the previous era is Chibs was just an incompetent with half-baked ideas and half-assed retconning for its own sake. RTD to me is more dangerous now to the legacy of the show because he has a plan, he has financing, and he has a singular commitment to his own ideology over anything else. And I think as far as Doctor Who goes, I think children are not just his target audience anymore. They're his targets.
Yeah, I actually, if you watch the rest of the interview, which I wish I could had the rest of it, basically he leans down and tells Jasmine that, look, this is for there's people out there that watch our show that don't know better. When he's talking about the bullying scene, he's referencing is there's people that are like those bullies in that scene that watch the show, and this is to show them, and maybe they'll see this and see the error of our of their ways, or our ways. We'll see the error of our ways by this bullying scene, and how, you know, trans people are people too. I don't think any of us have ever said they weren't people. I just think that, you know, he's really thinking that somehow this is going to reach our side by slapping us in the head or hitting us in the head with a sledgehammer about how wrong we are all the time.
But I want him to be this obnoxious and obvious in his writing, because if it's subtle and it's basically, if you're punched in the face, you know you've just been punched in the face, right? But if you're one of those people like in Shakespeare who just kind of like slides the dagger in, you know, slowly, where you don't even know that you've been, you know, attacked, that's worse. So if I have the choice, I want him to keep the, you know, the obnoxious, obvious, eye-rolling way that he's doing it, because then he's basically sabotaging himself, in my doing. Oh, one last thing for the moment. Can I, right now, in front of everybody, officially copyright the term indoctrination?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Because then I think that's kind of a good overall term for it. Not indoctrination, indoctrination.
Yeah, we should make that a hashtag, honestly.
Yeah, hashtag indoctrination.
Yeah.
Indoctrination.
All profits care of me.
Send the check to me and I'll send it to Gary.
Yeah.
Let me ride on the point you made, Gary, because I do have kind of a comment on that. I think when you had mentioned that, you know, if you punch somebody in the face, you know you've been punched in the face. If they slowly stab you, you're still going to know. But I think for me, what strikes me with the group we have now that are writing stories and the people like RTD, these people and people who align themselves with their beliefs. I don't, you know, you could punch, like you use the term punch someone in the face. They could punch someone in the face, right? But to them, it's not punching anyone in the face. It's an interpretive. There's an interpretation here, so they don't see it as punching you in the face or punching other people in the face. Well, that's for us. That would be transformational vocabulary. They don't consider it as such. So there's that aspect to it where you know you've been punched in the face, but then other people may say, yes, well, that punch was deserved, or we didn't really see a punch. All we saw was, you know, the hand kind of moved, it glided past you. I mean, they have a way of kind of interpreting this stuff that to them dismisses the criticisms. And that's how I think they would view that perspective.
I actually realized just in the moment that a better metaphor for this would be the old trope of the frog in the boiling water, that if you have a pot of boiling water and you try to throw a frog in it, the frog will immediately leap out. But if you put a frog in a pot of water, cool water, and slowly turn it up to boiling, they've shown the frog will stay there and until it's cooked to death. And so that's probably a better metaphor, Jason, for what I was trying to say than the
No, I think you made a good point. I understand your point. I think really whether it's a frog or a punch, I think that the point I'm simply making is that I don't think they would see it the same way. I think they would view the frog in the boiling water as, well, the water's not really boiling, you know, the water's not really that hot, you know, just as they say, well, these aren't really, this isn't really indoctrination. This isn't really, they do the same thing. So I think I agree with your point. I just think there's an interpretation there that they don't see it the same way.
The only thing I'd say to Russell is, Russell, I know I'm an adult, but don't shovel this at me. Don't tell me how to think or try to make me feel bad for being binary or male. Just entertain me. Just give me a good, entertaining Doctor Who story. Don't try to tell me I'm bad or wrong for being the way that I am, because isn't that your lesson with Yasmin, that we shouldn't bash anybody for just being the way you are? Well, stop doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make earlier when she was standing there bashing the doctor, when she's talking about how she feels alone, to the Meep, and how she feels like she's from another planet and basically just a weirdo. And then she in turn makes the doctor feel like he's less than. So yeah, you're right. 100%. 100% just it seems like Doctor Who has become a bunch of hypocrites. The characters are just a bunch of hypocrites. They want one thing from the character. They want one thing from the doctor, but not willing to give the doctor the same respect. The doctor is, and ironically, what was hurtful about Donna acting that way with him, to me, if I was the doctor, I'd be hurt by this, is because he has always supported Donna. He has always said Donna was more than she thought she was, that she was brilliant, that she was more than capable. And then she says that basically you were better as a woman. Yeah. See, my answer would not have been just standing there dumbfounded like a cuck. It would have been fuck off,
Yeah.
fuck off with you, Donna.
Yeah.
But that's, that would be rated M for Disney. I don't know if they do that, but yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah. In the comments, Jack Thursby said, all they need to show in Doctor Who is that the Doctor is good and good conquers evil. They can teach generally, things like kindness and bravery, but that's where it should end.
Right. And isn't that kind of non-binary? Isn't that kind of like, you're not putting any agenda ahead of anything else except just the golden rules? Be kind to somebody, love somebody, you're basically, it's just the golden rules. They're not satisfied with the golden rules anymore. We have to put in agenda, because if you think about it, Doctor Who has always been about teaching the golden rules, really, which is a very kind of biblical thing, even though it isn't. They're not overtly saying this is from the Bible, but they used to teach more biblical rules, golden rules, very 10 Commandments kind of things. But now it's like, it's got to be a agenda. And it's got to be, people on the outskirts that, and I get Doctor Who has always been that, people that weren't accepted. And we get that, but they made it like, only people that of this group can be accepted, and if you don't agree with this group, well, you're not accepted, which totally doesn't make any sense.
I almost
you either accept everybody or you don't.
Yeah, right. I almost expected at the end of that scene, before they went into the ship, and we haven't talked about the ship yet, but before they went into the ship, I almost expected the scene to freeze frame. And then just like at the end of at Rod Serling at the end of Twilight Zone, I expected RTD to come out, walk off from off camera, put up a bullhorn and say like, okay, kids, what did we learn about gender politics today?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just I don't know what it's going to be like next week. I really don't. I don't have the trailer. The trailer's not much. It's like 30 seconds of just them on what looks like to be a ship or a space station. I'm not sure which, but it doesn't look like it could be woke, but I'm not going to get that comfortable to where I'm not going to say they shovel some shit in there. And
it's the episode we know least about right now. I mean, I already feel in some ways like I've already seen the Toy Maker episode. Because I feel like I've seen so much from that third episode already.
Right.
But next to nothing about the second episode.
Right. Which, it could be really great. I don't know. It's, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said, well, the 60th at least would probably be somewhat safe. You know, there's probably going to be a few things in it, but it's not going to be major.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. I know
but
that. Yeah.
but you know what? We got we got comfortable with the 60th, and then this happened. So it makes you question, what else are you going to do in the 60th to just make it like a shit fest?
Disney gave him the Lamborghini. He wasn't going to get in there and do anything but put the pedal to the floor.
Right. And so if the 60th has woke stuff in it, what is he going to do with the Shooty era, which you already mentioned that, he's going to take the brakes off. So, I mean, and I said this on several different Twitter posts last night, that this is more dangerous. RTD is more dangerous than Chibnall because he's a good writer, and people are already falling for it that did not like the Jody Chibnall era. They're already falling for the bullshit. They're already accepting it all because they're so desperate for something good. And here's the thing. You can like certain parts of it. It's fine. My problem is if you're just loving everything and you're saying it's all perfect, I don't even do that with episodes I like. So, I think it's healthy to go, this is really great. I like this part, but this is really shit. This is awful. You should never do this again. I think that's a totally normal person. Normal people do that. And I'm not saying these people are shills. I mean, I know some of these people, so I'm not saying they're wrong. I think they just want Doctor Who to be so good again, so badly that they're kind of there's a glow, like it's a honeymoon stage, because they want this so badly, and I get that, but let's watch these with a very critical eye. Let's go in, and watch us, and don't be like taken in because the TARDIS is beautiful and then excuse the other stuff, because if you do that, once you start excusing stuff and you don't say something, then this is where this is how it happens. This is how they start slowly infiltrating entertainment. This is why back in the day, when nobody said anything about the subtlety that he was doing in 2005 and 6 and Torchwood, this is why this is happening. Because nobody said, well, they say, I don't really like that, but it's great. Other than that, no, we need to be critical because they will continue to get worse and worse, and it's a slippery slope. And I said what I said. People don't like it. Oh, well, there's the door.
No, I mean, I think that everything you said is absolutely valid. I mean, as I said, a few minutes ago, that's why I consider RTD more dangerous to the legacy of the show, because when you have a singular commitment to your own vision, when you have a plan and your plan is well financed, that is going to be a problem. I mean, and I get it. I mean, as far as fans go, I get it that after the complete train wreck of the last 5 years, there was a desperation almost from the second he was announced to automatically see him as the second coming. It's going to be even better than it was back in 2005, totally ignoring that everything he's written, produced, said in interviews, written in articles in the last decade has been suffused with this stuff. It was never going to be like it was back in 2005. This isn't new on his part, but you're right. You can't necessarily watch it with arms crossed, like, I dare you to entertain me. But at the same time, you can't just be a sponge saying, I'm just so happy to have any Doctor Who. I'll take whatever I'm offered. I think for old time fans, I think there's still the memory of back in 85, the show being canceled for 18 months, before it was brought back, for the last 4 years of the show. People still kind of retain the memory from that. So they don't want to do anything which might lead anybody to get rid of Doctor Who forever, no matter what they're being handed. But that's a very dangerous attitude to have.
Absolutely.
Well, let me say also that on that note, because you mentioned the honeymoon phase. That fans are right now. They're in a honeymoon phase. Let's face it. Even though I detest the preaching, I really do. I resent it greatly. I don't want to be told what to think. All I want to do is be entertained. If I want to see social issues, I'll watch the news. I'll go on Twitter. I watch stuff to escape reality. I'm not here to absorb more messaging. I can just turn the TV off and live in reality. But I think it's yet to be seen. If you get past the honeymoon phase, say, I don't know, 6 months from now, I'm not sure how fans are going to react. Right now, there's a schism. Right now, there is a divide, and it has peeled away some people that I think ordinarily might be a little more critical if this were 2005 or 2006. But the other side of that coin is the reason why I think these people are so much more accepting right now is because we have come out of an era where people were eating crackers and they've gotten a hold of something that tastes a little bit like a Ritz, and they've been so deprived that it makes sense that fans would fling their arms open because because there are some elements in the show, in the episode, that I did like. There are some things that were really good, I think. So I think fans are kind of just so relieved that we're not seeing a goofy, dumb doctor. And they're so relieved that the chemistry is good. There's a lot of things to be relieved about. And so the messaging has sort of gotten overlooked right now. But when it comes time to go revisit those episodes and rewatch them, you got to ask yourself, would I want to see it again? It's one thing to come into it being really open, or not even open, but just the idea that, hey, I'm impressed because it's not Jodie Whittaker. But when the dust settles and you get past the honeymoon phase and the glow and the shine tends to wear off, you're going to compare it and you're going to go back and you're going to look at it and it's going to be compared to the classic episodes and the stuff you like. And I think at the end of the day, people may very well kind of come around later on, because right now they're just too distracted by the fact that it's not Jodie Whittaker. But for me, I don't know how that's going to play out. But I do think though that the idea that he's dangerous, well, there is some truth to that, because I think you're both
dangerous
right.
to like the legacy of the show.
Sure,
if this goes on.
Sure, I think that's true. I think that's a valid point. I do think, the longer that this continues, just like any musical, like let's say you like music, any band you like, if they put out enough crappy albums, you stop getting excited when they announce their next album. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. If he continues down this road, I mean, it will reach the point you're talking about, Gary, where fans will pick up their toys and go home at some point. It's just going to happen. I mean, right now, like I said, we're coming out of an era where it was the desert. There was just nothing to appreciate. Nothing. Just nothing to appreciate.
There was Benny, right?
Well, come on, but I'm just saying overall, if you want to cherry pick, yeah, there was a couple things. I mean, I even found a few good things, but overall, it was just a disaster. So you're coming out of something with relatively little, very little talent, no real talent on the side of the protagonists, and so I think that explains a lot of it. But here's the other thing, though. You mentioned that, and I'm not going to take up much time here, but you mentioned that he is dangerous, and I think that's true in terms of the legacy. But the messaging here is so prominent. It's so prominent that you can't keep turning up the messaging with respect to everything else, the story, the chemistry. You can't keep turning up the messaging and think that people aren't going to at some point go, look, it's too loud. It's just too loud. And I think that's what's going to keep people at some point. Because if it gets too bold, right now it's just reached a stage where he feels emboldened, unlike 2005, and he's decided to ramp it up. But there's going to be a backlash.
I mean, especially when it's a hypocritical message, like Andy referred to later, where it's like not, let's treat everybody with respect. Let's treat, which I think is a good thing. Let's treat everybody with respect. Let's not hate anybody. Let's not commit violence to anybody. It's more, but he's not saying that. He's saying, no, like what I like, approve of what I approve of. It's okay to be intolerant of males or whatever, because that's my point of view. But just so he's contradicting his own message. But the one thing I wanted to ask the three of you is we've been talking about, fans' reactions. We've been talking about, our own reactions. But I was curious, what do you think would be, if this was since it's, now on Disney Plus, if this was, a viewers or a kids and parents, if this was their first episode of Doctor Who, they've heard, hey, this show's been around for 60 years. There's got to be something to it. If this was their first episode of Doctor Who without any context, how do you think that they would react? Would they say, is this what it's been like for 60 years with this, that, and the other thing? I mean, if you can put yourself in the mind of somebody that this is an absolutely new experience, what do you think would be the reaction?
I can very easily. And I sort of did that watching it yesterday. And I was able to do that. But my thought process after I got through, because this is interesting you brought that up, because I was telling Jason yesterday, I was like, if this was my first, time seeing Doctor Who, any Doctor Who, I would probably it's okay. It's cute and all. I don't like the woke stuff. I probably won't go back and watch more. That would be my reaction if that was my first, introduction to Doctor Who. I wouldn't go back and watch it. I would maybe watch an episode to see what it was like. And I would think, oh, David Tennant did a great job, but I just don't think this is my thing. That's what I would say. But that's just me.
Well, my grandson, is here, and he's 7. And of course we were playing it yesterday, and, he was kind of watching it a little bit, but he also goes to public school too. So he's already getting indoctrinated there. I mean, and it kept his attention for just a little bit. And then, he got bored and went to do something else, and eventually went out with his mom and all that. But I don't know. I don't know if that was my first ever show. I'd look at it, strange, and be like, really? Wow. So I don't know,
I think that, in this particular case, I think it may appeal to kids more than adults, possibly because they do have the Meep in there, and there's some scenes where he is kind of cute. I think maybe kids might be more open to some of the stuff because they can sit down and just watch stuff. Whereas, you're an adult, you're kind of time limited. For me, I think as an adult, if I were to sit down and watch this, not having any context at all, and it was a new experience, I would probably be a little confused. Simply because there's a lot of references to past, to history. And so I think as a new viewer, that may be a little confusing because you're not familiar with all this stuff. And it's not really explained all that well, the meta crisis. I mean, look, I didn't watch that episode. I'm not really familiar with all that. So I can kind of relate on that level. So I think for a lot of new viewers, because they're ignorant of the history, they're going to be likely to just soak it up like a sponge and go, oh, okay. They won't question it. So that is one aspect. But as far as enjoyment, I don't know. I think I would be confused. I think I would be a little too confused to really get what I think they would want me to get out of it. But at the same time, there would be some entertainment, but it depends. I think as a new viewer, if I was progressive, I would go, oh, maybe I should check this out.
This is the show for me.
And if I'm conservative, I'm going to go, oh God, and that. So I think it depends on where you align yourself kind of politically, maybe.
And for me, considering, as you all know, my deep love, for Classic Who, which is where I started, and my great love for the Capaldi era and for Matt Smith's era, I just thought, if I think that this is a child's first exposure to Doctor Who, I'd want to scream. I really would. But I saw somebody in the chat mention that Disney might is hoping for a Baby Yoda effect with the Meep. If they come out with a Meep plushie, I want it to be the evil Meep with the fangs. I wouldn't get the
too. I wouldn't get the nice.
I don't want the nice. You can keep your nice Meep plushie. I want the one with the fangs.
Yeah, I do too. I thought the Meep was more interesting when it was evil.
And that was
Yeah,
my favorite part of the whole show. Did you see that, Michelle? I don't know if you laughed, but that part
I
in the
did.
parking lot. That part in the parking lot where he's like, you, what did he say? He's like, you,
Oh, the hell with it. Yeah.
No, he said, you stupid woman and you're weird
It's a
child.
weird kid.
yeah, that was the one. I'm like, did I just hear that right? I'm like, did I just hear him call her a weird child? I'm like, oh my God. How did that fit? How did that pass RTD's smell test?
Could you give me the screen for the full screen for just a second, Andy? Here's what was going through my head during that parking lot scene. I really thought that they would show, and I know it probably would have been too expensive, like some scenes where we could see, because what I was visualizing was the original comic story, which is here's all the nice meeps playing and they're, dancing and all that kind of stuff. And there's the Black Sun, and then they become, conquest, and they, dun, dun, dun. And there's like a little executioner meet, and he's saying boppity bop, who's up for the chop, as they're beheading all of their little enemies. And then here's them going on the galactic conquest with the helmets, and the space wars with the Rarth warriors here, and then the crash at the beginning. So all this was going through my head during that parking lot scene. That's what I was visualizing as they were just telling the story of it. And I thought, well, I know you'd need like a few more £1 million budget to achieve this, but
honestly, like the chopping of the heads, like I would love to see that on Disney.
Hippity hop, boppity bop. Who's next for the chop? That's what was going on there. So.
That would have been entertaining. Like have a flashback scene where I would have loved that, because I think
that's why I said that if you want the original, which is a great story, hunt down because you'll think, wow, this is a cool story. They should have done this, that, and the other thing. But I know budget's a thing. But
he said it wasn't for kids, but then it's for kids, so he couldn't have done it. Disney Plus would have never let him do that.
Yeah. I did like the aliens that were hunting the meat. They kind of reminded me of the Mothmen. So that's what I was thinking when I first saw them.
That was new. That was in the original comics. The fact that they could fly, they had the little fluttery moth thing. That was not in the original. Story. Okay. But that was a good effect. I agree with you, Michelle. That was actually kind of, it's like, I was like, okay.
Until they started speaking, and it just seemed weird, like those accents coming out of that creature. It just seemed strange to me. It's just like, really? That's how they sound? It just sounded strange. But I did enjoy the parking lot scene. I didn't really enjoy that. At first, I was like, when he put the wig on, I was like, oh no. We're going to do that.
Do you think he was carrying around in his pocket since the Stones of Blood, which is what he used when Tom Baker did that whole thing before? I thought, wow, he's been carrying it around since then.
I bet it smells.
All right, so I wanted to ask you a question, Gary, since you're, I think you're probably deservedly so the most critical of the ones on the panel here, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. What did you think of the opening?
You mean him explaining?
No. The intro, the Tardis.
Oh, it was okay. I mean, the visuals were a little bit busy. The only thing that kind of like struck me is when the Tardis like shot out of that cloud at one point, like it was fired like a bullet. That was kind of weird to me, but it was very reminiscent to me of the Matt Smith opening. Going down with all the clouds within the time tunnel and everything. I kind of got that vibe from it. I thought the remix of the theme was okay. I mean, it was all right. I mean, it aired a little bit on the side of like a little bit too much, but not where it's like, what did you think?
I liked it, but then again, I'm not. I think if I'd had maybe your history with the show, maybe I might feel different. Just as someone who is not like, I don't have the longest history, but for me, I thought it was entertaining. But I can certainly appreciate I can appreciate your perspective. What were you going to say, Michelle?
The opening credits, yeah, they were okay. Now the ending credits, I didn't like the music that Murray wrote for that. It I don't know where he got the idea from, but it sounded like heavy breathing.
Yes, I
Which
was
know
gonna
there were
say that. I
singers in the
noticed that this
background.
morning, and it actually like I cringed. I didn't notice it
Yeah,
yesterday, but when I was rewatching it this morning, I let it play a little bit, and I was like, "What in
Mhm.
the hell is that?" Yeah.
Yeah, that's not being
Yeah.
respectful Russell, to obscene phone callers. I mean, come on. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe Disney put that in as a nod to Darth Vader.
Who knows? You know, another thing. It was actually one of the people in the chat mentioned. You know, going back to Davros, saying people in wheelchairs are evil. That was his association, but yet the scientist of UNIT was a wheelchair. You know, who did shoot missiles and darts out of her thing. I mean, so what is it? Are they evil? Are they not? Make up your mind, Russell. You know, he's straddling that fence there. You know, and I vote to keep Davros the way he was.
That's a piece of merch I'd get. If they came out with a life-size chair like that could fire tranquilizer darts and missiles, you better believe I'm going to buy one of those.
I'll be sure to rig my husband's that way too. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Let me ask you guys a question. So I'll start with Gary, and then I mean, because I'm not even attempting to take over the stream. I'm just curious. Starting with Gary, what would you rate this episode? Let's say they had stripped all of the elements that you didn't like, in terms of being, I don't even like the term woke, but you know what I mean. Let's say they took all that out, and I'll ask you the same question, Michelle and Blue Bonnet. What would you rate the episode?
An 8.
If they took all the elements out, yeah.
Yeah, all the stuff that you didn't like,
and
the
added
woke
back
elements.
a little bit more of the original story, I would say, yeah, an 8.
Well, let's keep. Well, I would.
Oh, okay. No, I got you.
Just as it is, without adding anything.
An 8. Well, no, that's actually not true, because I hated the way that. Well, let me ask you to qualify that. When you say stripping out the woke elements, since the rest, I mean, but would they still keep the way that they resolved the Metacrisis stuff?
Let's say that they had resolved that in a subtle way, in a way that you like they made the same point, but they made it in a way that you found acceptable.
8, 7 or 8.
Michelle?
Yeah. Maybe about a 7.5.
Okay. Blue Bonnet?
For me, it would be like a 7. Yeah, same. Because it's like, you know, it wasn't the greatest episode, but, you know, without the woke stuff, it definitely goes up, in my opinion.
I'm very surprised at your rating, Gary. That does kind of surprise me, because I was of the opinion that mainly there's some stuff outside of the woke elements that maybe I know you have some issues with it, or else it'd be a 10. But it does surprise me a little.
I the stuff that I thought was good was the stuff from the original comic story, which Russell didn't come up with. He was just adapting wholesale a great source. And the stuff that he added in, I think, was all the stuff where it went wrong. So, I mean, I'm right there with Andy and Michelle, that like around a 7. I mean, and we said Andy started this off at the top of the show with what we liked. I mean, there were some, things that I think it would be disingenuous to say, oh, it was all crap. No, because I'd be dishonest if I were to say there weren't some scenes and moments and the look of it. I mean, the cinematography and all that was nice. So yeah, 7 fits for me.
How about you, Jason?
I understand where Gary's coming from, and for me, I think, I would. What would I rate it? Probably. And this is just from a unattached casual viewer, probably a 6.5 or 6, only because I'm not, if I were a fan, I would rate it probably in line with Gary or Michelle or yourself. But as a person who just kind of casually watches the show, probably about a 6.5, something like that. And that, for me, that's pretty good. Actually, that's not bad. And I'm not a big David Tennant fan, so I think that plays into that as well. No, but I guess with your point, Gary, I can certainly appreciate that. And I think, there's so many ways that he could have made the story unlikable and changed it or done things to it or produced it in a way that you didn't like. So I think there's a lot of ways that he could have screwed it up. So I guess that's why I'm a little surprised, because you were okay with the way that he presented it, just aside from all the scarring.
Well, like I said, I mean, he was starting from, he had great source material to work with, and so that's actually on this, that's more of a nod to the strength of the original source material than that this is like some huge achievement, for
well, think about this for a minute, though. Think about this. If Chibnall had done the same, had produced and directed the same story, how would that have ended up, and what do you think your rating would be with him? So I think there is something to be said for RTD's involvement, because if Chibnall had created this story, if he had tried to reproduce it, I would venture to say, and maybe you can disagree, but I would venture to say I wouldn't have liked it one iota.
Probably. Only because we both are aware of the competency level of, the people involved, and it wouldn't be that much of a reach to kind of estimate how it would turn out. I will say that the one thing that did honestly surprise me one of the things that honestly surprised me was that, especially since this is the big Disney Plus debut and they're trying to reach a whole new audience instantly with this show, it did surprise me that this episode really depended on having a real knowledge of the backstory. That, I mean, compared to the original Rose episode where you can come in clean, never even having heard of Doctor Who, and get it. This really required you to have a good kind of insider knowledge of a lot of stuff that happened previously.
And if Moffat had wrote it, I think Michelle had put that in there.
Yeah, I did. If it was without the woke, it'd probably still maybe be about the same for me. Probably about a 7.5, I think. Just
I don't know.
He does write some good things.
Yeah, I don't know where Moffat lies as far as like maybe he's just as bad as RTD now. I don't know, but I almost wish this would have been Moffat, almost, because I'd have felt safer with it, because I think he understands that not only leftists watch the show, that you have people on the right that also enjoy, and people in the middle that enjoyed the show. That you need to make sure that you write the story in a way that appeals to all, not just one side of the. And I think that's what RTD did with this. He was trying to pander more to the left than really please fans. Although there's some of that in there, I just think
which is not to say that Moffat's run was free of it, but he restricted himself to an occasional line here and there, like almost like as an aside. I mean, it was there, but like the one line, like one of the lines that Capaldi and I'm blanking, on the rooftop, when they're talking, and there's a couple lines which you kind of flinch, but it's a line and you've moved on. But so I think Moffat was more skilled at that, whereas RTD just kind of pulls out the mallet and just kind of goes full force. I do want to not let I want to. I'm sure maybe Andy, if you were planning on doing it at some point, we need to talk about what we thought of the new control room.
Oh yeah, we will do that. But
okay.
I think it'd be interesting to get our take on what would we rate it with the woke, because I think it's interesting to show the difference. Here is without the woke. This is what we'd rate it. Here's how the woke took it down for us.
4.
Yeah.
Okay.
4. Definitely a 4.
I'll say 4.5, just to be. I originally thought 5, but after watching it again today, I think 4.5. So what about you, Jason?
Probably, I mean, maybe a 4, maybe even a 3.5. You know, I mean, because
Wow.
because I'm not as I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
you guys
get
are
it.
attached to the show. You're big fans. I'm not as big a fan. So
I'm not
Right.
even going for my fan cred as part of that. My thinking is that if I rated a 5, that means that the good stuff balances out exactly the bad stuff. But for me, there was some good stuff, but what was bad in my mind was really bad. So it couldn't be a 5 because 5 would be that, like, they'd be balanced. So that's
yeah,
why it has to be somewhere below 5.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So we'll
Some people
talk
are
about
saying 2
the
out of 10 in the thing. So
we'll
yeah,
end the show. We'll end the show on a good note. We'll talk about the console and then
yeah.
well, that'll be it. But yeah, what did we think of the console? So, Michelle, what'd you think of it?
I liked it actually. It had some classic elements to me in it. I like how open it was. The only one thing I really didn't care for was as they were standing there and he was starting up the sequence and running around the console is like the lights in the background kept going like rainbow colors. I'm like,
Mm.
we could have done without that, you know.
Oh wow, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I noticed the different colors. It might not be every color of the rainbow, but that hint was just there, like very subtly. Um, I like the idea of the
If that
little
would have been the
coffee
only
machine in
problem
there.
in this
Yeah, yeah. If only. But
Yeah.
I liked it overall. I like how, David Tennant ran through there. He was like like a kid in a candy shop running around and was amazed. I did like that aspect of it. That brought
Yeah,
the fun back to it right there.
that was fun.
Right. So
I'm sorry I was laughing. I was looking at Vin Weasel's comment, which I couldn't help, but that just
okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't
Okay.
mean to be chuckling
RTD, no, really
during
tedious
Michelle's comment.
dickhead. Wow, that's awesome. So we have our
Yeah,
name.
I'm
And
sorry.
Yeah,
Jason said you can't spell retard without
Yeah, no,
RTD.
so that just made me
true.
chuckle. So I apologize for that.
All right, so Jason, what did you think?
Gary, did you already give your opinion on the TARDIS, the console?
Oh no. Okay,
Go ahead.
really quick. I thought that I totally agree with Michelle. The whole idea of running around where you could kind of use the room as a jogging track. I thought, okay, that's kind of fun. I thought, well, clearly they should have made it waterproof or coffee proof. Personally, my kind of love goes for more of the kind of compact, kind of Jules Vernish elements, like from McGann or Capaldi, or the secondary control room from Tom Baker, that one era where he was in the Victorian kind of small secondary control room. That's kind of where my best control room lies. I mean, it did have roundels, but overall, and I really don't want to come off like I'm making something like being knee-jerk negative, but at least for now, it just seems like it's too big. Like there's too much dead space. It looks like a Starfleet flight control deck. Like it's a room that should be being manned by like 40 different people at various consoles and stuff to run the thing. Not like just one person to operate from the central point. So I just thought maybe they'll use it, or there's doors leading to different spaces. Maybe we'll explore what's in those doors. But for now, it just seems like there's too much dead space. I did like the console. I like the fact that he didn't know what some of the stuff on the console was for. That was fun. So it's kind of a mix for me.
All right. Jason?
I like the early feel of it. It just felt like one of the early TARDISes. Other than like Gary said, it is rather large. It is like a warehouse inside to an extent, and I don't know if that really registers on my radar. I think I wouldn't have minded if it were smaller. There was a lot of build up to the. I don't know if anyone read the reports, but there was definitely a lot of buildup to this TARDIS. There was reports that it was like, how are we going to make this thing? It seems, physically impossible. Some of these reports were kind of over the top. And then you see it and you're thinking, well, what was so engineeringly difficult about this? It seems as they have stairs and not stairs, but platforms moving in different directions. But it didn't seem like an overly complicated engineering feat to me. But, nonetheless, I thought it was a good aesthetic. I like the clean, kind of sterile aesthetic. There wasn't like a whole, I think some people could say, well, it was a little boring. There wasn't much personality, but I didn't mind it because if you look at Hartnell's console room, it wasn't full of, personality, but it was clean. It was aesthetically pleasing. And I feel like it kind of harked back to that, but it added this large, voluminous element to it. And I don't know that I feel any which way about that. I mean, I could go either way. So,
Wendy has a great comment. She says it reminded her of a Dr. Seuss design. That's true.
Yeah, it does. For me, I did like it. I really I would have loved to have seen them actually go back to the original and just use that. For me, as like all this changing of the TARDIS every time the Doctor changes, it gets old. And I know that this is the progressive way. You got to change everything, but I did like the lights. I thought that was cool. I really didn't notice that they'd gone to rainbow. But I did like how that they were kind of like LED-ish, and you could change the colors, and I thought that was very cool. I thought that was added, and I did think it was a little big. But all in all, I think it's a big improvement from what
One
we
early
had.
design I saw the schematics of one of the earlier designs, and one of the design artistry has like a jukebox sitting there close by the console. So maybe they'll add like little things like that.
Yeah, it does have a lot of space. I would prefer to just, it would have been nice since it's the 60th just to go back for at least Tennant's run to the original TARDIS, because it is the 60th. It would have been nice, but again, fans they're not listened to, and I said the logos is really great. I think the logo was it was one of the good things to come out of all this.
I did think it was funny that Donna goes into the console room and within 3 minutes she's already destroyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's your opinion on the term Hooniverse, Gary?
It's okay. It's better than, I think as a marketing concept, I'm fine with it. I don't flinch from it.
It's an old term.
I flinch sometime from Whovian, but Hooniverse, it's like, all right. I mean, I'll get used to it.
Does it? That was my thing. Does it not feel a little like Dr. Seussish?
Well, that's not a bad thing.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just feels kind of Dr. Seussish, but sort of like Horton and the Who's. Horton hears a Who.
Well, maybe they'll could they do a Hooniverse spelled HOO? They could do that.
I don't really like it.
Help.
Go ahead.
I can't help but wonder, the TARDIS, it is big and empty looking. We know that Tennant's not staying. He's got 2 more episodes and then he's gone. So I wonder if we're going to get another change. And it's just, so. You don't think so? You think it'll be the same?
I don't think they would have gone all out budget-wise to put this together for just 3 episodes. That's just my instinct.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe, yeah.
Well, I think we've
especially
covered just about all we
don't know, especially since they haven't answered the question yet of why he looks like he does. That question is still out there to be resolved.
That is true. We'll probably find out in the giggle.
Which we hope is not a musical. Name. Yeah, which we hope is not a musical.
Are you thinking it's going to be a musical?
I've seen some stuff floating around and I'm like, oh, please no. The Star Trek one was bad enough. We don't need one in Doctor Who.
If it is, I'm telling you, he'll be. He'll be buried beneath the cemetery.
Andy doesn't have good experience with Doctor Who musicals.
No, I don't. I don't have good experiences with musicals and sci-fi anyway.
Also about the
Strange
Starbase,
World growing
I
up.
forgot to mention, if you, for some reason, and I know you can, if you can't find the original comic story, Big Finish did an audio adaptation with Tom Baker playing himself of the original Starbase comic story. So that does exist as a
Okay.
really good Big Finish adaptation as well. So if you can't find the original comic story, that's a good way of getting a feel for what the original story was like too.
All right. Well, I think we've covered it all. Thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll be back next Sunday doing the same thing. I think Sunday is a good day to do this up
Okay,
until Christmas time. So we'll be
Yes,
back.
definitely.
And please come back. And if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.